As always, there are no surprises with Charlemagne's views. He tries to package them in being articulate and seeming thoughtful and saying things, but the views are always coming from a place of Trump derangement syndrome. Before anyone calls me a hater, let me just say, yes, he's accomplished a lot, and I respect that. He's written books, I respect that. He's done a lot, I respect that. And a critique of him is not me hating, because that's the first thing people say. It's just my view. I'm just a guy with a Wi-Fi connection and a camera, hopefully adding something to the conversation. So let's just see this conversation that he had with Laura Trump, and I will react to it.
All right, well, Charlemagne, I'm so honored to have you here. Thanks for coming on My View.
Laura, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
You did Breakfast Club. I had to return the favor.
Yeah, we're trying to reciprocate. I appreciate that
That's
very
right.
much. So look, we're 6 months into President Trump's second term in office. Now, I know you've been critical. You've had your bones to pick with President Trump. If you took his name out of it and looked solely at what has happened, the policies and the things that have changed around the world and in our country over the first 6 months, how do you rate his presidency?
We don't even need to know, but we will get into it. We don't even need to know. But there's a couple of things that I'll say in this. First of all, we or the conservative media will put Charlemagne on their platforms, and I think it's good that he shows up. I think it's good that he comes prepared, and I'm excited that he has the conversation. But I think they give him too much slack, and I think they give him too much of a wide berth without fully checking him, because I think what he said at the beginning, where he was like, "Oh, you on the Breakfast Club, I had to return the favor," like that came across as a little bit sarky, like, I'm only here because you did my show, which, and then in the conversation, like the way he's coming across is like he's doing everybody a favor, which he's not. It's good that he's there, so I'll give him props for that. But come on, act like you are also getting something out of this, because you're going to be clipping this and putting it on your show and reframing the conversation, guaranteed.
See so far.
I wouldn't give it a good rating.
Why not?
Simply because, the least of us are still being impacted the worst. Like when you look at something like, the big, beautiful bill, that's something that, I'm going to benefit from because of the
This thing around the least of us, and it's not going to benefit them, that is a loaded thing to say, and it's hard to really break that down, because within any policy, the least or the most vulnerable will always be the ones impacted the most, because they're the least and they're the most vulnerable. It just goes without saying. And there is no way when she asked him that question he was going to say anything positive. Like, he just does not have it in him. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't really watch the Breakfast Club regularly. I only watch it when clips go viral or he has someone on there that I have some type of interest in. But I don't think I have ever heard Charlemagne just give Donald Trump a compliment without a caveat. So it will be a yeah, but, or it's almost like anything good that he would say would always be a consequence of something bad that Donald Trump is actually trying to do. So I'm not surprised that he was like, "Oh, I wouldn't give him any good marks."
tax bracket that I'm in, but there's going to be so many people that's hurt by that bill, and anything that takes away Medicaid from people and is going to put people in a worse financial situation than they were previously in. I'm not for. And he ran on that. Like, he ran on the economy. He ran on saying that grocery prices were going to be down, and
that has happened.
No.
Inflation is trending down. And by the way, Medicaid, we want to make sure that people who are not actual recipients or shouldn't be getting Medicaid are off of Medicaid, so it can actually benefit more people. There is good stuff in that bill, though. You have the 2017 tax cuts that are made permanent, and that really is for everybody. But that's for everyone. Everyone in this country is impacted by that.
And this is the thing. The Democrats would have been in a situation if those cuts were due to expire, because they say that if those cuts had expired, it would have been the largest tax increase in U.S. history. So when he's saying he's not for anything that's going to make people worse off, again, try to avoid saying always and never, because he's saying that he is not for anything that would make people worse off. So therefore, that means he would be for renewing the bill that Trump had put in place in his first term. Therefore, it was a good bill because it actually put people in a better position. And if you slow down what he says, and if people were to really pick apart the things that he's saying point by point, he'd be 100% right on some, but most of the time he would be wrong, or you would see that he doesn't actually know what he's talking about in the depth that he tries to project that he knows what he's talking about. This is why, if you when you saw him with Vivek Ramaswamy, Larry Elder, even like Byron Donalds, these people were able to talk to him in a way that he couldn't just brush off. He couldn't just say a vague or general thing. And quite often, I guess to Charlemagne's credit, he conceded. He may come back and just go right back into his delusion. But in that conversation, he had no choice but to concede, even if it's just by saying, well, I need to look into that. He's not used to that on his show, because quite often the people that he has on his show, he shares the same ideology with. And so it's not really a conversation of like he's challenging their ideas or they're challenging his. They're having a conversation, and that's fine. But when he's in conversations where the other person has an opposing view and they're prepared and they know what they're talking about, I've very rarely seen Charlemagne come out on top in those type of conversations.
We also have things, by the way, like money going to school choice for parents all across this country. There is a lot of good that I think will come out of the big, beautiful bill. But what about things like...
Right now, people are hurting. And he campaigned on immediate change, day one change.
And you don't think you felt any change? People aren't feeling change.
No.
Do you...
Stupid, right? So Laura should have been like, well, every politician campaigns on immediate change. And it's, to take them at their word that that's going to happen is just an exercise in just being naive. Of course, things are not going to change in day one, right? So yeah, should politicians say it? Probably not. Should the voting public believe it? Absolutely not. But I think educated and more mature people realize it's a thing they say directionally. There's very few things that I can think of, whether I agree with them or not. There's very few things that I can think of that directionally from day one, Trump has not put in place. Now, much to the chagrin of a lot of people, because they are directionally moving in the way that he said he was going to do them. Did he resolve the war in Ukraine on day one? No, that wasn't going to happen. Did he resolve the issue in Gaza? No. That was not going to happen. And to believe that he could do it in day one as a voting person, and if that's the reason why you voted, then you don't understand how these things work. These things are complex. But as far as prices going down and the economy, he's done things on multiple levels to move it in that direction. And some of these things need to go through the economy before they come to fruition. But this is where the hypocrisy comes in quite often. So with the tariffs, from day one, when he announced the tariffs and that strategy, everyone said it was going to plunge us into a recession. It has not happened yet. Not to say it won't happen, but it has not happened yet. And their response is always, well, it hasn't worked its way through the economy yet. So what they're saying on that hand is he's done something that they said would plunge us into a recession. It has not done that yet. Their conclusion is, well, it hasn't worked its way through the economy, but yet they'd hold him to the standard of him changing things and delivering certain promises, which he shouldn't have made, but delivering certain promises from day one. They're not consistent in their worldview, because the worldview or the things that they say are really more about opposing the current administration than having a consistent worldview where some things that are done will align, some things won't. Even the fact that Charlemagne said earlier that, these things will benefit him in his tax bracket, but the reason why he opposes them is because it will impact adversely the least amongst us. That's one of those moral things that you can say, or you can virtue signal on, because we don't know how he actually voted, right? We don't know how he actually voted. And if he was to vote his best interest and his family's best interest, you can't knock that. But he conceded in his point and in his criticism that actually that would benefit him, but he's actually opposed to it because it's not benefiting other people, which, you know, from a virtue signal perspective, that makes sense. But on a real level, if I want to vote in a way that's going to benefit me and my family, I can't be criticized for that because I need to take care of me and my family.
Feel safer knowing that Iran will not have the ability to develop a nuclear weapon?
Iran?
Yeah.
Sure. I feel safe if you're telling me that a country won't have the ability to build a nuclear weapon.
Do you feel better knowing our borders closed?
Yes.
Okay, so
absolutely.
don't
get me wrong. There's certain things that I absolutely, understood. Like, as far as, border security. But I understood border security for different reasons. Like, people were complaining about the border because they felt like people were coming into, the country and, taking jobs away from people in certain areas and certain.
See, and what's wrong with that? So what's wrong with the fact that I'm going to complain about a policy that means it's going to make it harder for me or my family or my kids to be able to get a job? That's a legitimate reason to complain about something. Like, why wouldn't you have an issue with the fact that potentially a policy is going to make you unemployed?
Certain communities, and that is the conversation that I had been hearing, for the past year and a half prior to the election. I understand that, but I want to see the criminals and illegal immigrants, actually deported.
Well, that's happening.
Not people who are here, trying to go through the process of being in this country legally. Like when you see people actually getting deported and getting detained, and they're actually trying to go through the process of being American citizens, that's not right.
Well, we're allowing those people to leave. They actually get money to leave, and then they get to reapply to come back here the right way. So,
but leave and go where?
They go back to their home country, and then they
what if they've never even been to that country?
Straw man argument. Like what people need to do in these conversations is nail people down to a point. What percentage of people, because I would imagine with any policy, you're going to have some collateral damage. And on a human level, that's horrible. But if you look at the countries that are the safest and the laws are make society the safest, what they have to do is they have to have a zero tolerance approach. Because the moment you start to open up or widen the exceptions, that's where criminals also get through. So again, I'm not condoning, and I would never celebrate someone who does not meet a particular criteria being caught up in these policies. Absolutely not. But what they do, and what you see in these conversations quite frequently, is they look at the exception. They look at the one exception where it went wrong, and hopefully it's made right, but it went wrong, and they make that the point. And the whole policy is then supposed to be around that exception. It's similar to the conversation around abortion. Like the instances of the R word or inappropriate behavior leading to a pregnancy, those are minute. And even if you when you're having that conversation about abortion, you concede those points to someone and say, well, what about the other 99.9999% of the times where it's just something that someone chose to do for personal reasons? They don't want to have that conversation. They will always come back to, well, what if it was the R word, or what if it was, something inappropriate that happened? Because their point is they just want to make it legal. They just want to make it that everyone can do it. But they try to find a point that most people, again, regardless of your view on abortion, most people would concede certain instances, right? But it's such a minute part of the total picture. They'd rather focus on that. And that's what they do with the border. So with the border, we need to get people that have committed heinous crimes and continue to commit heinous crimes out. In order to do that, you need to have policies. But if these sanctuary cities and jurisdictions were more supportive, when they actually have a felon in a prison and is being released, if they would cooperate with the laws of the land, the general federal laws, and not have these carve-outs to protect people, then, you know, we could have that conversation. But clearly, Charlemagne is going to talk about an exception, and he's going to make a broad statement. Laura Trump doesn't really challenge him on it. And he feels like, yep, I've just averted or avoided having a conversation in a level of detail that would probably prove him wrong.